The studio always smelled faintly of silver and rain. Maybe because I liked washing the film trays with my own hands. There was something sacred about watching memories appear from nothing. That afternoon, I was editing an old photo set when he walked in. No appointment, no introduction. Just the quiet jingle of the bell above the door, followed by a voice that sounded strangely familiar. "Are you the photographer who takes pictures of memories?" I looked up. He stood by the window, half lit by the setting sun. A white shirt, slightly wrinkled sleeves, and eyes that looked as if they had lived 1,000 lives. "I take portraits," I said carefully. "Sometimes. Memories, yes." He smiled gently, almost apologetically. "Then maybe you can help me. I'd like a picture of my future." I laughed softly. "That's not how cameras work." "I know," he said. "But maybe you're the only one who can make it happen." He placed an old film roll on my desk. The label was torn, but I could still make out one word written in faded ink. "Clara." My name. A chill ran through me. "Where did you get this?" I asked. He hesitated. "From you? You gave it to me." 8 years ago. I froze. Because 8 years ago, I hadn't even started photography yet. I didn't sleep that night. The film roll he left on my desk felt like a pulse, silent but alive. At dawn, I gave in to curiosity and loaded it into the darkroom. The familiar rhythm began: tray, water, fixer, light. But when the image started to form, I dropped the tongs. It wasn't just his face on the film. It was mine too. We were standing together by the riverbank, the same place I used to go to clear my thoughts. My hair was shorter, his shirt was the same one he wore yesterday, and in the photo, we were smiling at each other like old lovers. I stumbled back, my breath fogged against the red light. It didn't make sense. I'd never met him before yesterday. Yet the photo spoke a truth my memory couldn't reach. Later that day, he came back. He looked calm, almost as if he knew what I'd seen. "You developed it," he said quietly. "Yes." My voice trembled. How? How is this possible?" He smiled faintly. "It's not the first time our memories have crossed." "What do you mean?" He looked at me, eyes soft and sorrowful. "Sometimes, souls meet before the world allows them to." For a long time, neither of us spoke. Only the sound of rain against the window filled the silence, the same kind of rain that always accompanied the smell of silver. And somewhere in that moment, I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. The next morning, I found him waiting outside my studio again. He looked the same as before, calm, quiet, carrying that same unspoken sorrow. In his hand was another photograph. "This is where the next one was taken," he said. I looked closer. It was a river, lined with birch trees. The sunlight glimmered off the surface like threads of glass. And there, in the middle of the frame, stood me, holding a camera. Only one problem. That place didn't exist. Not here. Not in this city. Not anywhere I've ever been. "I've never seen this river," I whispered. He nodded, as if he'd expected my answer. "That's because it hasn't been built yet." "What do you mean built?" He looked away, toward the pale morning light. "It's a dam project," he said quietly. "It will flood this valley next year." But the photo was taken 3 years from now. I stared at him, searching for a hint of a joke. There was none. "Do you realize how impossible that sounds?" "Yes." His voice was calm. "But everything about us has been impossible, hasn't it?" I wanted to deny it. Yet the truth hummed beneath my ribs. That strange magnetic pull I couldn't explain. He looked down at the photo again, tracing the outline of my smile with his thumb. "I took this," he said. "But I don't remember when." The rain began again, soft against the windows, just like every time he appeared. And I wondered, maybe the rain wasn't following him. Maybe it was following us. The rain didn't stop for 3 days. I spent most of them in the darkroom, hoping work would keep my mind quiet. It didn't. Every time the water rippled in the tray, I saw his reflection there, faint, patient, waiting. On the third night, the power flickered. A single bulb buzzed overhead, the shadows shifting like ghosts. That's when I noticed a roll of undeveloped film lying near the sink. I didn't remember leaving it there. Curiosity, again. I loaded the roll into the machine, let the chemicals breathe life into the negatives. Slowly, the image surfaced grain by grain, light by light, until I stopped breathing. It was me again. Same riverbank. Same man. Same smile. Only this time the photograph was dated October 18th, 3 years from now. The timestamp burned at the edge of the frame like a wound that refused to close. I touched it with trembling fingers, half expecting the ink to smudge, to lie. But it didn't. A knock at the door broke the silence. When I opened it, he was there, soaked from the rain, his hair clinging to his forehead, eyes too gentle for the storm outside. "You saw it," he said softly. Not a question, a certainty. "Yes," I whispered. "You were right. It's real." He smiled faintly. "No, Clara. It's not real yet." He stepped inside, dripping rainwater onto the wooden floor. Then, almost hesitantly, he added, "The first time I met you, it was at that river. You told me to find you before it disappears." I swallowed, heart trembling. "But I've never been there." He looked at me with a quiet sadness, as if remembering something that hadn't happened yet. "I know," he said. "That's why I'm here." The rain finally stopped. For the first time in days, the air smelled clean, like something was starting over. He sat across from me in the studio, steam rising from the mugs between us. The quiet stretched like film, fragile, glowing, waiting for something to develop. "I need to tell you the truth," he said at last. I nodded, afraid to break the moment. "I've been here before," he continued. "Not in this lifetime, but in another." He reached into his pocket and placed an old, crumpled photo on the table. I recognized it instantly. It was one of mine. A portrait I had taken years ago of a terminal patient named Adrian Pay. He had been young, gentle, always asking if he could borrow my camera to see the world the way I did. He died 2 weeks later. My voice trembled. That was one of my last hospice sessions. "But how do you have this photo?" "Because," he whispered, "that was me." The words shattered something inside me. He wasn't claiming to be him, he was remembering him. Every tone in his voice, every look in his eyes matched the man I once photographed saying goodbye to the world. "I don't know how," he continued softly. "But when I woke up in this life, I remembered a woman with a camera who promised me something." My lips parted. "What did I promise?" He looked at me as if the memory still hurt. "You said, if there's another life, come find you before it rains." The silence after that felt endless. Outside, a single droplet fell from the gutter, catching the light like a tiny silver thread. And suddenly I understood why it rained every time he came. It wasn't coincidence. It was remembrance. The next morning, I went back to the hospice. It had been years since I last stepped through those white corridors, years since I'd packed away the ghosts of my camera. The walls still smelled faintly of disinfectant and roses. I told the nurse I was looking for the old storage room. She nodded, guiding me to a dusty corner of the basement. Inside, boxes of unclaimed belongings waited like silent stories. And there it was, a small wooden box with my handwriting on it. Patient No. 47 Adrian Pay. My breath caught as I opened it. Inside lay a broken wristwatch, a hospital tag, and one last roll of undeveloped film. I took it home that night. The sky was already heavy with clouds. When I entered the darkroom, the familiar rhythm returned. Water, tray, light, silence. I turned on the red lamp and loaded the film, my hands trembling as if time itself were breathing beside me. The image emerged slowly. It was him, standing beneath the willow tree outside the hospice, looking straight at the camera. But his eyes weren't sad anymore. He was smiling. And behind him, I was there too. Same camera. Same rain. Same moment that had never existed. The knock came just as the picture cleared. I didn't have to open the door to know who it was. When I did, he stood there drenched, smiling faintly, the storm behind him whispering against the night. "I told you," he said, "the rain remembers." I stared at him, the photo still wet in my hand. "It found us again," I whispered. He nodded, stepping closer until our reflections met in the glass. "Then maybe it's time," he said softly, "to finish what we started." Outside, the rain fell harder, not sad this time, but full, alive, like the sky itself was exhaling relief. And for the first time, I raised my camera not to capture loss, but to keep love from fading. Click. The shutter echoed like a heartbeat. The rain had softened by dawn, falling like a whisper against the windows. He was still there, sitting by the studio window, tracing raindrops with his fingertips. I'd left the photograph from last night to dry on the table. In the dim morning light, it almost looked alive. The colors were faintly shifting, like it was still remembering how to be real. "You're leaving, aren't you?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "I was never meant to stay." My throat tightened. "But the photo, you're in it. It means you exist." He shook his head gently. "No, it means you remember." He stood, walking toward, the camera still on its tripod. "May I?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. I nodded. He turned the lens toward me. The red light blinked softly, recording, breathing. "Clara," he said, his eyes holding mine. "This time, let me be the one to take your picture." The click was soft, like a sigh. I didn't smile. I didn't have to. He already knew what it looked like when I did. When I looked up again, he was gone. The rain had stopped. The window was open, letting in the scent of wet air and silver light. Only the camera remained, and inside it, one last photo. I developed it hours later, my hand steady now. The image surfaced slowly, me, sitting by the window, sunlight on my face, and behind me, faint but certain, his reflection in the glass. He was smiling. Just like before, just like always. And in that moment, I understood. The soul doesn't need forever to be eternal. It only needs to be remembered. Click. Another photograph. Another heartbeat. This time, I smiled. 3 years have passed. The city looks different now. Cleaner skies, new buildings, fewer old faces. Yet sometimes, when it rains, I still glance at the door, half expecting to see him standing there, smiling the way he used to. My studio has changed too. The walls are covered with framed photographs, not of sorrow, but of quiet moments that refuse to fade. A child laughing in the snow. A woman watching the sea. A man holding a letter to the wind. And in the center of it all, hangs one image titled "The Memory Photographer." It's the photo he took of me that night, sitting by the window, light on my face. But if you look closely, just beneath the glass reflection, you can still see the faint outline of his figure, half hidden, half light. Most people don't notice. But those who do, always ask, "Who's the man behind you?" I always smile. "Someone who taught me that love," I say, "doesn't need to stay to remain." Every evening, before closing, I light a single candle by the window. The flame flickers gently, and for a second, the glass seems to breathe again. Two shadows overlapping, caught between past and present. Sometimes I whisper to the reflection, "You found me before the rain." And when the candle goes out, I imagine him smiling somewhere, still tracing raindrops on the other side of time. Click. Another photograph, another heartbeat. But now, every picture I take feels less like goodbye, and more like coming home. Sometimes, I still hear the sound of rain against the glass. Soft, steady, like the world breathing between moments. They say every photograph steals a second of time. But I've learned that the right picture can give it back. I used to take photos of people who were about to leave. Now, I take them for those who have returned. In memories, in dreams, in light. I believe he's still somewhere between those frames, where silver meets shadow, where love refuses to fade. And when it rains, I no longer wait by the door. I lift my camera, and whisper into the lens, "Find me again, before it rains." Click. The shutter closes. The story doesn't, because love, once captured, never truly disappears. It just changes form, and keeps shining, in someone else's heart. Subscribe for tomorrow's story.